So I was just watching the Midas Touch Network, and it seems that Trump's team, his legal team, has moved to dismiss. They have filed a motion to dismiss the hush money case, I believe, in New York. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. And they have argued that external factors, including public commentary, were influenced by, you know, entities like the Midas Touch Network, which is owned by Ben Meisalis, right? So him and his brothers, they have this YouTube channel. They're like this progressive media outlet. And basically, Trump's attorneys are saying that they poisoned the jury by fostering an anti-Trump sentiment in their coverage. And to be fair, Midas Touch is huge and its reach rivals traditional media networks like Fox and MSNBC and so on, even CNN, I think. But excuse me, Ben Meisalis, who, oops, I'm going to be coughing in 2 seconds. Ben Meisalis, who owns Midas Touch, he seems very amused at being named on this sort of quote unquote high level. And he's almost like, you know, overly modest about it, like, oh my God, us? You think we're important? I think that, what do I think about that? I think, well, I throw it to Chat GPT because I have my own feelings about it. This is a paragraph of what Chat gave me. It's like, it says here, quote from Chat, blaming external media for a jury's decision rather than focusing on Trump's alleged actions raises significant questions. First, jurors are instructed to base their verdict solely on the evidence presented in court, isolating them from external commentary. While Trump's lawyers may claim that pervasive media narratives could subconsciously bias jurors, this argument assumes that citizens engaged with such content consistently and uncritically, an assertion difficult to substantiate without evidence of direct influence. Furthermore, Trump's own statement, this is all ChatGPT's answers. Trump's own statements and actions were integral to the case. His documented reimbursement of hush money and other communications presented during the trial underscore that the jury's decision was likely based on substantive evidence rather than media framing. Claiming that media outlets like Midas Touch shaped the outcome might divert attention from the case's merits while undermining confidence in the judicial process. So that was Chat. So what do I think? I mean, it's nuanced. It's complicated because yes, on the one hand, I think that Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney at the time, he went to prison for this transaction, right? And there was public opinion, a lot of social media narratives around that time as well, but it did not impact the court's decision to hold Mr. Cohen accountable for this transaction, this same transaction. Now, so there's that. And so I think that, you know, you can't sort of just ignore that if everyone else is accountable, then the main person in the story ought to be accountable too. On the other hand, I do think that um, social media outlets like YouTube channels that are very well regarded, like Midas Touch. Midas Touch is huge. It's a left leading progressive media outlet, and it's got nearly 4 million people subscribed. I said 4 million. Can you even wrap your head around 4 million people. This is a lot of influence. It's a lot of reach. And I don't agree that, they are totally without, how should I even put this? I mean, I don't believe you that Trump and his lawyers should blame or could legitimately blame Midas Touch and other such networks for the outcome here. But I also think that these big channels are very influential, aren't they? And they do have influence. And I do think that, yeah, potentially they could influence some people's opinions. It's not to say that viewers are engaged with the content uncritically. People have their own mind, they have their own brain, they have their own opinions quite often. And then they come to these huge channels, and these channels reaffirm what people already believe, much in the same way that more conservative channels would have the same impact. People who have conservative views and conservative ideas, they go to these channels to reaffirm and to bolster what they already believe for themselves. So you can't really blame the channels. It's like Trump. People blame Trump for creating division in the country and for, all of his very conservative views. Some of them might even be scary views. And him giving people permission to have these views, but the idea is that the people already have the views. They already think this way, and they're just like on their knees thanking God that someone like Trump came along to reaffirm their views, and yes, to give them permission that it's okay to have these views. But at the end of the day, you can't really blame Trump for their views. I mean, their views are their views. They're not uncritical, right? They critique what these channels like Midas Touch and so on are saying. And once they assure themselves that these channels align with their own way of thinking, that's why they sign up, that's why they subscribe, right? So what's the takeaway? So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is twofold. One is that, the jury in this case that found Trump, guilty of this probably were exposed, at least some of them, to this progressive media, but not all of them. I don't think everybody watches Ben Meiselas's show. People have their own opinions, right? They listened to the evidence and they drew their own conclusions. And unfortunately, for Trump anyway, it came out not in his favor, right? They found him guilty. But on the other hand, it's not totally unreasonable to say that, you know, big channels like Midas Touch do have the potential, at least, to influence people's thinking, which is one of the reasons I was actually kind of angry with Midas Touch after Kamala lost, because it's one of the few channels I listen to, that, and the guy Pacman, David Pacman, and people like that. I mean, and they at no time indicated that Kamala was going to lose, especially Midas Touch. And I'm like, you are the experts. I look to you for expertise, and I don't think I'm the only one, which is why a lot of people unfollowed Midas Touch and David Pacman right after the election. It seems like they've rebounded, So the idea that, they're completely innocent, you throw their hands up, we had nothing to do with, influencing the jury. I don't know if I agree with that, but at the same time, I don't think that blaming them completely for the jury's decision is reasonable either. Because I do think people have their own ideas and their own opinions about these things. And I think people who were on the jury, for whatever their reasons, they came out, saying that, yeah, Trump was, responsible or guilty or whatever in this hush money case. Anyway, you guys, My channel over here, I always say I can say whatever I want because I have no influence. Nobody ever listens to me anyway. But when a lot of people listen to you, yeah, I think you have to be mindful